Hi and welcome. This is Dr. Damon Miller, your Organic MD. In just a minute, we're going to join Christine Roche, Master of Public Health, Certified Nutrition Specialist in private practice for over 25 years, helping people improve their health by improving their gut health. She has taught at Stanford University, worked with leading functional and preventative medicine physicians in the United States and Europe. And if ever there was an expert prepared to help us with this problem of improving gut health to prevent cognitive decline, it's Christine. So thank you for being here today. Look for contact information at the end of this video. Thank you.
We start with root cause. So I work with many clients every week looking at the root cause of their digestive concerns, whatever they may be, whether they're heartburn, whether they are brain inflammation. We look at, well, what's the root cause? So in complex disease, there's always a story, that's beneath the surface, a root cause. And so as I've been working with functional medicine principles of identifying the roots of the tree, because in standard medicine, what's great is we work with, giving drugs for certain conditions, and when surgery is indicated, it can be very beneficial. But when you're looking at lifestyle factors of people who've had gastric reflux for years and people who have parents who had dementia and Alzheimer's, there's a key factor here that comes into play, which is what's going on underneath the tree. What is the roots? How's your digestion, absorption? How are you eliminating? How's your toxin status, and so on. So what I've been looking at in my research of specifically how to prevent brain inflammation and neurodegeneration is what I've found is that, we're living at a time of a significantly altered microbiome right now. And that has to do with the dietary changes over the last 100 years, GMOs, genetically modified organisms, by the way, that do interfere with your body's ability to make the very microbes you need to have a healthy brain, industrial farming, pesticides, herbicides, and significant changes in the gut bacteria as a result of Roundup and glyphosate, which is now not just in our food supply, but it's in the water, it's in the air, it's everywhere. So just knowing that over the last 100 years, what we've done is shifted significantly a large amount of beneficial bacteria, and what we've done is reduce them quite a bit by the introduction of new ways of farming and also chemicals. Industrial chemicals, pollution drive this, along with the high stress lifestyle. The electromagnetic frequencies have actually been found in research to significantly alter the microbiome. If you've had COVID, your microbiome is significantly altered when you get COVID. And I'm going to talk more about this around the influence of pesticides, GMO. Now let's look at the brain, the gut and the brain. Your microbe in your gut is your unique microbial fingerprint, or your unique garden that's growing. And when you cultivate a garden, I hope many of you are gardeners or benefit from gardens, you know that you've got to have the right soil. So the most important thing that has to do with the prevention of brain degeneration and neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's, dementia has to do with how is the soil in your garden? How is your unique microbiome soil being cultivated by you? We're going to talk about tools for having a healthy soil that you then grow your microbes in. And most people that I work with over the last 5 to 10 years find that many of the plants in their microbial garden in their gut is being destroyed, and it's being overgrown by bad bugs and bad viruses and bad funguses. So basically, your microbial fingerprint, your microbial garden is the foundation for prevention of neurodegenerative disorders. And that's why it's so important to test your gut to find out what's actually happening in your microbial garden, in your landscape, your inner terrain, which the Europeans say is the key to health. And these microbes, they produce a lot of beneficial compounds like vitamins, minerals. They help you absorb your food, and anti-inflammation factors. So you have a microbiome in your mouth, your nose, your skin, your throat, of course, your intestine, but also your vaginal microbiome. All of these microbiomes throughout our body have a very diverse ecosystem, and they all work together. And so what the research has shown is that your gut microbiome can migrate to the brain and to other organs in the body. So, for example, when people have had cancer, unfortunately, they find that the microbiome is very different. It's altered. It has a lot of inflammatory and bad microbes. And so, in this case, the same with Alzheimer's and dementia. All neurodegenerative disorders have to do with the bacteria actually migrating from the gut to the brain. So we know that everything's so interconnected that how your gut looks is directly related to your brain. So the gut-brain connection is such a key. And when you, unfortunately, right now, when you're eating any non-organic food, you're getting a hefty dose of glyphosate or Roundup. That's why working with a physician like Dr. Miller or others, around detox protocols is such a key, because the research shows that brain degeneration is very much related to, if you imagine a barrel where you have a disordered microbiome, you've got bad bugs growing there that shouldn't grow, that you don't even know it. You might not have any symptoms. You're starting to lose your focus. You find that your memory is bad, your focus is bad. Well, it turns out that residual Roundup, which is found also in all organic food now in the air and water, compromises our own body's ability to detoxify, and it impairs the function of vitamins and minerals and impairs your neurotransmitters. It affects directly your brain chemistry. It also changes the composition of the microbe. So the residual Roundup or glyphosate converts a lot of the good bacteria to bad dysbiotic bacteria, unfortunately, as COVID does the same. When you have COVID, the research by Leo Galland and others shows that it's interesting that when COVID hit someone and they did stool samples of all these people and assessed them, they found that they start to produce very fermented bad bacteria and basically end up having a lot of fungus and yeast all of a sudden within even a week of having COVID. And the good microbes that should be there start to diminish, and the fungi and the bad microbes take over. And that's why Dr. Galland and I are working together towards a protocol for people to prevent COVID. There's certain species of microbes to take orally or take rectally. And then if you do get it, whether you're vaccinated or not, you will have enough of those species that during the course of the COVID, you have a certain microbiome treatment, which has made a huge difference in the gut and the brain, because it will help with stopping the impairment. So let's look at, we've all heard of the gut-brain axis and the connection between the gut and the brain. Most of you know that brain symptoms such as brain fog, depression, memory issues, inability to focus, inability to learn, the research has all shown it's related to gut symptoms such as constipation, heartburn, acid reflux, which means actually you don't have enough stomach acid, and abnormal motility of the gut. So that's definitely connected. Even if you're in whatever age you are, if you have brain symptoms, your gut microbiome is affected. Fatigue, depression, constant candida, poor memory is very much related in the research to not having enough digestive enzymes, not able to break down the food, and also having a lot of dysbiosis and having a disordered microbiome, having not enough of the species that you need to really improve your cognition. So we're going to talk about how the people that have the best microbiome have the reversing age-related has to do with microbial diversity. So the biggest thing across all the research in every journal is that the people with Alzheimer's and dementia are oftentimes already on several medications. These medications have changed or altered their inner terrain. They have too little of the strains that they need to boost their cognition and too much of the pro-inflammatory dysbiotic, the bad bacteria. So if you see there's a landscape where stress lack of exercise, what you eat, round up the toxic load, affects the types of the bacteria, microbes in a way that if you actually have brain degeneration, it's often because you have a very limited number of microbes working for you that are all pro-inflammatory rather than anti-inflammatory. And you're also getting the bad to proliferate. The other part that's so important about the difference in the microbial communities in the research, which was one of the most important factors in all the journals, was the differences in the different microbes as people age. And so, for example, researchers from the University of Wisconsin School of Medicine compared the gut microbiome of subjects who were cognitively healthy and who were not. And there was a very clear outcome that when they traced the bacteria where in all the research studies, the people with dementia had decreased microbial richness. Over time, the diversity had begun to fade out. They only had one or two different species growing. They didn't have the hundreds of species that you need. Something had happened to them that diminished the species, and then they also had what's called intestinal permeability. Now, permeability is widespread. It's called leaky gut. You've probably heard about it. It affects the sinuses, the joints, the adrenals, colon, and thyroid, and the skin. Every part of your body is affected by permeability, but how permeability starts has to do with antibiotics that oftentimes even a short course can start to break the membranes down. If you imagine that the membranes are like a sieve with leaky gut, it's like a sieve that allows to open and close naturally to let things that are good in and not let the bad inflammatory, any viruses, pathogens, keep them out. So that's the lining of our gut is like a sieve that very carefully regulates that. What happens is with leaky gut is that the tight junctions open up in the intestines and allow these inflammatory particles, it could be fungus, virus, bacteria, to cross over into the bloodstream and cause an antigenic reaction at that point. And so when you have that, you have leaky gut and you also have autoimmune disease because your body's defending itself. But most of the research studies show that due to that antigenic reaction and the lack of diversity, and then the bad species were starting to grow, there was such an inflammation factor that came along that also every patient in the studies had sort of an inflamed gut with pathogenic bacteria that went into the brain as an inflamed. It led to brain inflammation. And brain inflammation is, of course, the underlying issue that's contributing to the amyloid plaque, all the things with Alzheimer's and dementia. So, for example, the latest studies, November of 20, Neuroscience News says the results are indisputable. Certain bacterial products of the intestinal microbiota are correlated with the quantity of amyloid plaque in the brain, and there is a very clear indication of the gut microbes themselves with increased inflammatory species being directly linked to Alzheimer's and early onset dementia. So the great news is, what can you do about it? I'll be giving you different tips with Dr. Miller, but the key is, for example, in 2019, 20, and 21, there was barrier disruption with all the people with Alzheimer's, leaky gut, pathogens, dysbiosis, fungus predominated. And also the most important thing you want to make a note of is butyrate, which is a short-chain fatty acid that is produced when you ferment your vegetables. Your body in your intestine ferments and digests the fibers you eat, and it produces butyrate. However, if you are depleted in butyrate, what we do in my clinic, we give patients butyrate to take rectally or orally as a way of increasing butyrate because it is a one short-chain fatty acid that has been linked to Alzheimer's and dementia if you have very depleted butyrate. And so one of the things that all the research shows is, if you can just increase your vegetables to like at least 4 cups a day of dark leafy greens. Most of you know the Mediterranean diet. I'm not going to advocate a specific diet. What I am going to advocate for all of you is you need to know that a diet that is high in sugar, refined sugar, packaged food, processed food, as opposed to farmers market type organic food, there's no question that that diet and all the research showed that this biotic fungus growing, increased inflammation, decreased bacteroids, decreased butyrate. People who do not move enough, again, the research showed that people with the strongest resistance to the brain degeneration exercise a half hour every day, even a mild walk. One of the key factors, it's not just what you eat, but it's also taking the time to eat slowly, breathing. A lot of people work when they're eating. Most of my clients, I had a client who said she's working for all 3 meals and she had serious stomach acid issues. She was not able to absorb her nutrients. You can be 30 years old and have severe malnutrition and malabsorption. But it's year after year in the studies from scientific journals that show that cultivating your garden is number one, and that in the cultures where people live to be 100, the research all shows they consume fermented food before every meal, sometimes half a cup of fermented food like kimchi, sauerkraut, cultured yogurt, coconut yogurt. They consume cultured foods, organic, lots of greens, 4 cups with lunch, 4 cups with dinner, and they also have removed the processed refined food. Now, to cultivate a garden, what's very important is to also test your gut to find out what's going on. Because I guess, so many people I work with have species that they've never heard of, like Klebsiella, pneumona is so predominant. I said, I felt fine, but I didn't know I have a 4+ inflammatory species in my gut. So that's why I ended up, after seeing so many people specializing in custom gut testing. This is a kit that is shipped to your house. At the end of my presentation, you'll get some information on that, but you take it in the privacy of your home. It's 2 samples in the lab. FedEx picks it up, and you learn about the types of microbes that are inhabiting your gut and, of course, your whole body. Do you have the good, the bad, or the ugly? Which ones are overgrown? Where's your weeds in your garden? And then I help you get the weeds out and cultivate really diverse, rich plants in your garden and help you with the prebiotics, such as, for example, asparagus is a great prebiotic, cultured yogurt, kimchi, beet kvass, fermented foods, also for virus protection, the purple foods, purple potatoes, purple cabbage, garlic, onion, sauerkraut. Those help the soil, create the soil of your garden to be very rich. And then what you do is you eat the foods, such as the ones I just mentioned, dark leafy greens, really vibrant vegetables, fruits, nuts and seeds, but get all the packaged food out. Then you start to grow your garden, and the test shows you exactly where the weeds are and what they are and which yeast is overgrowing, which would then travel not just from your gut, but throughout your body. That's why my clients of 20 years do their annual gut microbe assessment that I do with them once a year, because they say, I feel great, it's fantastic, but I want to know what's in my gut. And it also captures years before people get colon cancer. Those people that don't want to always do a colonoscopy, sometimes you have to because of your family history. These people take the test that shows whether or not you're leaning towards colon cancer and whether you have it. And it has like 20 digestion markers. It shows whether you have enough butyrate, the short chain that prevents dementia. And there's a new test now that I do that's very different for those of you that are on the call that have done testing with me, that shows the richness, diversity, and also the abundance. So it shows the abundance and whether or not it's dysbiotic in a whole new way. So we now have the latest in PCR DNA testing. So remember, food is your medicine. And I just want to mention 2 probiotics, because people ask me, can I just go to Whole Foods and get a probiotic, that's what I've been taking. So I said, well, let's look, because they had a lot of reflux and bloating. Most people I said see me have bloating, gas, inflammatory bowel disease. They feel discomfort. They're always constipated. So I said, let's look and see what's going on. Well, it turned out they were taking an over-the-counter probiotic, but nothing cultured, nothing cultivated in the garden. So you can throw a lot of different things at it, but what I specialize in is supporting you to get the best strains, because you have to get strain specific, customized to you, and most important, that you rotate the species. So for the prevention of Alzheimer's and dementia, the biggest thing that 5 journals showed is a rotation of species month by month, and then retesting and seeing how it's colonizing in your microbiome garden. So the most diverse species, not letting any weeds grow, getting rid of the weeds with natural methods, rotating them every few months, and testing once a year, using food as medicine, and being aware that the biggest thing too that affects your microbiome garden and the prevention of neurodegeneration is cortisol levels. And so the research in the journal said, yes, we want to get a diverse microbiome of what happens with stress. Right now, we're under a lot of stress as a nation. It raises cortisol levels and it reduces the beneficial bacteria. So remember that stress affects your gut. It can cause gut permeability. It inhibits your enzyme production. I see many patients with reflux and who are on 5 or more meds. They're not absorbing the nutrients, and they have 5 dysbiotic flora when they test their microbes. So the good news is, when you have a lot of stress, just know medications, stress and toxic load, and bad water really affect the garden you're growing, diminish the diversity of microbes, and bring in the bad weeds, bring in the overgrowth, the bacteria that's overgrowing, sometimes 5 or 10 different bacteria. And that's why I'm asking you to consider, especially if you have stress, you've had COVID, alcohol also disrupts the balance. Sugar feeds the bad bacteria, and caffeine disrupts. Doesn't mean you can't drink a glass of wine once in a while, but if you drink it every day, you do a lot of caffeine, you have a lot of stress. We need to talk about that. So what we're doing in my practice is removing all of the bacteria, removing the gluten, inflammatory foods, repairing the lining, and renoculating. And those studies that I looked at show that the brain is then much more likely to be able to exist in a healthy state. In other words, you're not going to get the microbes migrating to the brain, to the bloodstream, through the leaky gut into the brain, and you won't have a brain that's on fire, which is what all of these people say. You can prevent and reverse cognitive decline, especially in the early stages, by working on your gut microbiome. So why guess when you can test? I will have a special offer. I have a special offer for you, which is that when you call me in the next 24 hours, then at 650-856-3151, and we will put that up. I will give you a 15-minute introductory meeting for all of you to discuss on Zoom or on the phone what your particular needs are, because there's many different ways to test, but my special offer for all the listeners is that 15-minute introductory call, looking at your situation. How can I help you the best with your issues with the microbiome and preventing brain degeneration? And then also, when you choose to go ahead, when you call me in the next 24 hours, you get 50% off the most advanced microbiome test, which is the Doctor's Data GI 360. And I will help you customize your nutrition plan and your microbes that you need for optimal prevention of brain degeneration. And that's what all the research has shown, is you really need to customize very specifically the probiotics, the species, the amount of the species, rotate them. So I will help you with all of this. And we can talk about it in that 15-minute introductory call. So it's a great pleasure to be with you, and I very much look forward to the next steps. Are you there, Damon?
I am here. Hold on.
Great. Thank you.
That was great, Christine. That was great. So I just want to, for those of you on the call, you can see the offer over here for Christine. And if you're watching the recording and you can't see that offer, just go to the end of the recording. There'll be a slide there with the contact information and repeating the offer from.
I don't see it at the moment, Damon.
I think it only shows to the participants.
Oh, I see. Okay, great. Yeah. Thank you.
So the so I just wanted to say a few more things. I'm not going to take much time here, but I just want to kind of put what Christine has said into some perspective. And so the perspective I want to offer is this. Since the 1980s, there have been, it's probably well over $5 billion worth of research trying to find a drug to treat Alzheimer's disease. And in the mid or the kind of later part of the 1980s, one thing to realize too is that the definition of what Alzheimer's disease even was changed. So now, today, pretty much any kind of dementia in an older person is called Alzheimer's, even though it's understood that there are some subtypes and different types. But that doesn't really matter, because what Christine and what I'm talking about, degenerative disease in the brain that looks like dementia, they all have they're more similar than they are different. And they all have underneath them the kinds of disorders that we're talking about and that Christine was talking about. So what happened, in the last 10 years or so is that these doctors, these kind of old gray-haired doctors who'd spent their entire life looking for some sort of a cure for Alzheimer's, and what that $5 billion has bought is zero, nada, the big bagel, zip, not even a drug that makes the symptoms any less, nothing. And so these doctors said, well, maybe we ought to start trying to look at this a little differently. And they started looking at what integrative medicine has been working on for forever, is how do you make the person healthier? Would that help with these complex diseases? And they found that, yes, it did. In fact, you could actually reverse them. And there's, if you work with us, we'll talk to you about it, but there's sort of a ranked list of things that are dealt with to help people back themselves out of dementia like Alzheimer's. And at the top of the list are things dealing with diet and the gut. So you have to do more. You have to work with, if you have nutritional deficiencies or methylation abnormalities, or you've got other diseases, your pancreas is out of whack and your sugar control is out of whack, or you've got chronic infections or viral infections. I mean, there are all kinds of things that can degrade your health, but a lot of them it's hard to deal with. But dealing with the gut is a lot easier. So what Christine is talking about here is, number one, you don't need to guess, you test. That's her kind of cute saying, why guess when you can test? But, these are things that not only would help back somebody deep into a degenerative disease like Alzheimer's, but it can also help prevent. So, these studies that Christine is quoting, where they take people that have a diagnosis of Alzheimer's, and in every single one of them, their gut is just a mess, dysbiosis, bad colonies of bacteria, inflammation, on and on. And so the thing that is going to be helpful to you is to know that if you keep your gut healthy, it's likely to prevent these things. That's not proven, but that certainly is turning out to be true. So it's a strategy. Keep yourself healthy and avoid serious disease. Today, we're talking about neurodegenerative disease, cognitive decline. But doing the testing, the work I think is really exciting, which is kind of a missing piece in all the years I've been looking at. It's, you know that the gut is important, but what do you do? But this work that has identified specific colonies of bacteria that are beneficial, that you can re-inoculate the gut with once you've made the gut a little healthier, that's very promising work. And also, it's interesting in the just as a side note, there are some people who say that, back in the day when food was cleaner and we lived a better life, a human being would have tens of thousands of different bacteria in their gut. And now some people have just a few dozen. it's a desert. Our guts are a desert. And so this testing looks at that, and the therapies that Christine is looking at and upgrading and spending, an undue number of hours studying, they're the things that will reverse things for you. So, you test, you intervene, then you have to test again, down the road, maybe every 6 months at first or a year, see where you're at, adjust your strategy, do it. The other thing I'm going to put up here, the thing that we're going to be offering, hold on. Not till January, you got it, but it's a workshop on eating better for a lot of things, but in this case, things for cognitive decline, degenerative disease. So the Healthy Eating Workshop, not a very imaginative name, but that's what we've called it for 26 years, and it works. So you're going to, if you're on my mailing list or if you're on Christine's, you're going to hear more about this in December, how to sign up, how to get involved in this. But it's basically working with just a diet that's real food, but how do you eat so you're not going to age as quickly, so your brain's not going to fall apart on you, so things are going to keep working, live a nice long life and have everything working. So I guess that's it. It's like I say, diet, gut health, those are at the top of the list of the things you need to do. But if you do truly have Alzheimer's, there's more that needs to be done. So that's why you would call us, engage with us, and we can help. I will say one of the tough things about this, it's nice when there's a pill. It's nice when there's a magic bullet. You take a pill twice a day and everything gets better. That's not the case with cognitive decline. That's not the case with Alzheimer's and dementias. And I know this is not the case because I've seen many people try that, and they just continue to fall apart. I know that these other therapies work because I've worked with people and they get better. There's one woman, she's been publicly talking about this. She's with there's a very nasty form of Alzheimer's called frontotemporal dementia. The FTD, frontotemporal dementia, FTD, the FTD people say it's not Alzheimer's. I'm kind of a little skeptical. It's actually what Alzheimer's used to be, before they broadened the scope of what they call Alzheimer's. But this woman has FTD, and she's worked with me and a few other people. But we started her on a path about 5 years ago. She was supposed to have been completely disabled and in a nursing home by now, but no, she's not. She's traveling all over the world talking about what it's like to have FTD. And she's been on 60 Minutes. She's been on, conferences. And, what she was planning on doing is documenting her decline and, trying to do that. But she's sort of frozen in time. Her brain isn't perfectly normal, but she's traveling all over the world talking about having dementia. And she talks about the things she's doing, which are the things we're talking about to keep herself healthy, keep herself going. So I know these things work. I've seen it. I've seen it work in other degenerative diseases. I've seen it work in Parkinson's. And there's a whole new group that's formed on ALS, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, Lou Gehrig's disease. There are people who are reversing ALS. And what are they doing? They're doing these kinds of things. They're working with making the person healthier, working with gut health, working with nutrition, working with supplements, working with clearing chronic infections, on and on. It's you do what you can do, but if you do those things, very serious disease gets better. So I'm going to just stop with that. I just encourage you to work with us, take advantage. The test that Christine is offering as part of this deal is it's an amazing test, and it's a few $100, yes, even if with the 50% discount. But the information you get is priceless. You just can't get that anywhere else. And so call her soon. And like I say, if you're just watching the recording of this, go to the end of the recording and there will be a slide there with the contact information for us. And let's put up mine. So there's mine right there, just the Healthy Eating Workshop.
You want to just mention your phone number, Damon?
Yeah, you can support at organicmd.com or 650-780-9900, 650-780-9900. And I'll put Christine's back up here too. Her phone is 650-856-3151, 650-856-3151. Call us. We both kind of have the same thing. We don't get started with anyone without talking to you on the phone. There's no charge for that initial talk. It's maybe 15 minutes. It's not an extensive consult, but it's enough for us to hear what's going on with you, for you to hear what we do, and it's enough time to figure out whether we should be doing more together. So it's been great being here. Thank you, Christine. Thank you for all the work you do putting this together. And we may, again, if you're on the recorded version of this, at the end of the thing, we'll also put a few slides that Christina created, just a little more information there. But you'll definitely find our contact information. Okay, so I think, we've kind of gone a little over, but we can, I think if you have questions, just call us. Just let us know. That's going to be the best way to go. We had a little bit of trouble at the beginning. I'm sorry about that. But whatever you missed, if you were live, just go back and watch the first part of the recording because we'll stick it back in there. Okay, Christine, you got anything else? Anything else?
Pleasure being here with all of you. And if you listen to the recording, enjoy, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you. Okay.